Okay, guys, I wanted to do something that's a little different than what I've seen out there on uh, the hobby YouTube, which is try to mix in both auction recap but also education on at least my perspective as a signed vintage collector. What stood out to me in the past few months of all these sales that are pretty big and record breaking inside vintage market. There's some that make a lot of sense. There's some that I think could leave someone scratching their head. And uh, I would say generally there's a lot of positive trends here, but like everything over the past 3 or 4 years, we're all skeptical of how long can a market really be hot and going up. So I wanted to give my perspective as someone who primarily goes after signed vintage cards, as you've seen in some of my other videos. And maybe that could be useful to folks who are thinking about dipping their toes or at least just curious on what's going on here. So, the way I'm going to set this up is just run through, a couple dozen of the more interesting sales that I saw in 2024. Up until last night, I'm recording this on April 26th. So up until last night, there'll be sales included, and there's going to be some likely suspects, but some that maybe you weren't expecting to see as well. And I'll try to weave in some of the tips as we go on, and usually tie those into what we're looking at. But in general, to start us off, I think I want to say, there's two distinct sections here. One is in the signed vintage market, there are the Hall of Fame rookie cards, and then there's basically everything else. And within those buckets, there's more subcategories. If you think about players that are uh, lived through the TTM craze of the early 2000s and up till today, and there's players who passed in the 50s, 60s, 70s that didn't do that, so you didn't see as many of the through the mail type volume added to their signed card count, in the populations, whether that's graded or not. And we'll get into some of that, but on each side of those two big categories of signed Hall of Fame rookie cards and signed vintage in general, those two, there's pretty equal coverage across all these sales that I've got pulled up. And I'll hit on some of what's the population counts and what drove, I think, some of the prices. And then there's also just going to be a little bit of, as we go, look through some of the research on past sales and frequency of these sales. So I think I'll just jump in here with the biggest sale of the past 4 months in signed vintage was this one here. You can see I bid on this lot, but I was outbid. So this was not my card, but this was a really special card when it popped up. People were surprised it was only a 2.5. Some of the key things here as you think about investing in a signed vintage card or buying one and paying top dollar for it at least, you are looking for a handful of things. You're looking for typically low pop or something unique about this card. It's not just one of many. People always want to climb mountains when they are collecting, and one way you get to the top of the mountain is you have one of one or the highest graded or something very unique. And what you can see here is there's an impeccable centering in this 51 Bowman. You don't usually see that in this card, and you also see a well-placed ballpoint auto from Mickey's early days. So this was a period signed, as they called it. So you can see that, if you go to the PSA card autograph facts, if you look up Mickey Mantle PSA autograph facts, you'll see exemplars of Mickey's signature throughout his career. And you can pretty quickly notice that this is different from what we'll see elsewhere in the video. There's a handful of Mickeys in here. And that's because this was signed probably in 51, 52, 53, somewhere in that range when he hadn't fully developed his signature. And that matters to people almost entirely because of the rarity associated with that. It's cool to think, hey, maybe this was, an early collector who got this card and pretty quickly brought it to the Bronx and got it signed. That's awesome. But I think generally people like this because it just is another layer of um, uh, rarity. And so this card has, real rarity. You can see that another aspect here is you have provenance. So this was the original owner who got it signed, and that is something that people always, wonder about signed vintage is, are you going to have uh, something that people like PSA say is correct and say is, yeah, this is definitely Mickey's signature? Um, or is it, maybe they got it and maybe they're right, maybe they got it wrong. And when you have provenance, that's adding a factor here where you should feel somewhat comfortable that, well, at least more comfortable that that leap you're making and the belief of the signature is a sound one. Um, and so in many ways it doesn't make sense at all, or it makes a ton of sense at this set the highest price. I mean, it's the most collectible player in many vintage circles. Really rare period signature. There's only one or two of these that I've seen come up besides this one. And then there's amazing centering, really good color. Of course, the roller marks here on the card condition hold it back, and that's both its appeal, but also its technical grade. But it's got a lot going for it, and it's that Hall of Fame rookie card that we'll get more into. And then as we just take a step back and look at the sales of 51 Bowmans, I mean, this felt pretty much in line, where you'd expect, at least in the high end of in line. If this is the best one we've seen in the past few years, then it should be the highest price. And that's what turned out to be the case. We can pop up other ones that you can look at your own time, but you'll see that the centering is a little bit different. Maybe it's kind of got a bold blue marker versus the pen that people don't like as much. This is another period signature, vintage signature that did incredibly well at 200,000. And so that, I think overall this sale makes sense. And if you're looking at this and saying this doesn't matter to me at all, I don't have $300,000 to spend on baseball cards. Look, I'm totally with you, but I think there's something to be learned from the extremes, because the differences jump out to me more. When you see a sale like this compared to the Robert Edwards sale of another signed 51 Bowman that happened in the past month. It was nearly 100,000 less. And, why is that? There's a couple factors, but it's really easy to talk about those factors in this, when there's this extreme of a difference versus when you're looking at, say, a signed Frank Robinson rookie, where amazing card. I have one. I love that card, but it's relatively available. And the differences between maybe a vintage signature and a modern day signature is not that much, or maybe $100, and it's just not as clear sale to sale. And this one I think jumps out. So that's why I want to spend some time on these. They're fun, beautiful cards to look at, but they're also informative. So this one sells for $80,000 less. And if I look at this again, that kind of makes sense to me. It's a lower technical grade, worse centering, not a period signature, still a very nice ballpoint signature. Many people like the ballpoint on vintage cards because it feels more aligned aesthetically to have a old cardboard signed with ballpoint versus a brand new bold blue Sharpie. Those things can still look really great, as we'll see, but that's a common trend, is that if you find either a playing days auto or at least a vintage ballpoint on the vintage card, that can be more desirable. But this one still is a blazer. It's a signed 1951 Bowman rookie card of Mickey Mantle. And as we'll get into, those Hall of Fame signed rookie cards is a core collecting variety that is only growing in popularity. People have always collected Hall of Fame autographs. People have always collected Hall of Fame rookie cards. They're some of the most popular registries in the PSA set registry database. Now you're putting those together, and it just makes sense that this would be a very desirable card. And it's a population 20 or 30 overall, population 30. There's only 30 51 Bowmans that were signed by Mickey Mantle, and they range in grade from authentic up to 5 PSA 5. And so having these be PSA 2s, it's right in that middle area. They both have great eye appeal. Makes sense that these are some of the biggest sales. All right, let's start marching forward here with this very similar story. A period signed, I believe this came from the same collection. Period signed Willie Mays 1951 Bowman rookie card. PSA 4 autograph grade 8 with this interesting red auto. This was before Willie did that 4 for his W, and it just looks more vintage. And I don't even know if this was originally red or if it's changed over time. I'm not sure, but overall, I think it's placed fairly well. I think one thing I've come to realize is signed vintage. One of the things that matter in value is where does that autograph line up with the card aesthetically. And personally, I kind of like it when it's right here, but it's placed up here, and that's fine. There's most of the time, as long as it's not covering the face, or if it's blending into like a black background. Those are two things that people don't generally like, but otherwise it doesn't drastically change value. However, this card, I think, was helped by its centering, its great color, no roller marks, generally, really strong 4, on its own. And that's something that someone will look at and say, yeah, I would love to have that card in a 4, never mind, it's also signed. And I think that's why it did so much better than, many other sales. This set the record for signed Willie Mays rookie cards by looking at these sales, 40,000. This was another 4 with a PSA 10. And you can see these just aren't comparable cards. This is drastically off center. The color's faded. It's a modern Sharpie signature of Willie. It looks good. I'd love to have this card, but I think most people would say, hey, this is clearly a better card, and therefore, yeah, this price I think lined up to me. When you compare it to Mickey, this might be Willie's best autograph rookie. There are some PSA. There's a PSA 4.5, and there's a PSA 6 in the population. And there's a handful of other 4s, but this might be the best one, and it does over 160,000 less than the period signed Mickey Mantle. So you could buy this card twice if it existed and still have another 30 grand left over. People have been debating the Willie Mickey value differential forever, and I think I can step away from that debate in this video. All right, continuing the trend in the Hall of Fame rookie card category, and we'll see a couple of these cards as well. This one too, I'll move a little bit quicker on some of these because we've hit some of the points, but this is my favorite player, favorite player to collect, Jackie Robinson. This is total pop of 8. There's 4 authentics. There's a 1-5 that you see here. There's a 2-3 and a 5, and it's a very pretty card. There are not a lot of things to knock it. There is a little crease, as you can see here. I was bidding on this card pretty aggressively, but one thing that held me back was I did not like this R. I was fortunate enough to meet a family member of who got this signed. It's an incredible collection, amazing collector, Mike Greenbaum, that this came from. So this card also benefits from provenance, but he was someone that would go to the stadium with hundreds of cards and photos and meet people as they were walking in. And clearly, Jackie took this and kind of scribbled his name somewhat in a hurry, I would imagine, and that's why he ran out of space, or at least crunched this part of the Robinson a bit. And I've just found that I like to look at my cards and appreciate the way they look, not just the fact that they're incredibly rare. I like both of those things. I think I'd rather it be incredibly rare than incredibly pretty. But when you're talking about spending 80,000, 100,000 on a card, to me, it's that type of money is something where it needs to be perfect. And this one wasn't, but it did actually set the price, the record price for a signed 1949 Bowman Jackie. And frankly, I was a little surprised. I think there was some heat around this auction. People really loved the Greenbaum items in here. We'll see another one that blew me away. But you can see that there was a $72,000 sale in 21. There was actually a $96,000 sale that I think only shows up when you type in auto. In 2022. Another great card. Like this one arguably looks better. Doesn't have the provenance, but I would say better centering, better auto placement, better auto. But this one went for more by $21,000. And I'm not super surprised by that. I think it's incredibly hard to find when you think about where these cards have ended up. Many have gone to really high value collectors, or collectors with highly valuable collections. And that is typically an indicator that if they are truly a collector and it's not like the most expensive card in their collection, they're just going to hold on to it. And so this is a key consideration as you look at signed vintage is, yes, what's the overall population, which is in this case 8. The other thought is, well, what's the float? So in the stock market, like what's the shares freely available to trade? In this case, what's the number of cards of that 8 that I can reasonably expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years? No one can predict the future, but if a couple have already sold to core collectors and those have set 6-figure prices or high 5-figure prices, which to some people might say, oh, maybe I should sell that signed Jackie that I've been sitting on because it might be worth $95,000. If they're not already feeling that way and this card hasn't popped up, then you might not be able to see another one. There might be one more, but if a couple out of the 8 are sold to collectors, a couple other are hanging back because even at these levels, it's not worth selling to that collector. You kind of have to wait for the death or the divorce or something to happen to see those other things come back and those other cards come out. And so you might say, well, my budget's 96 because that's what the last one said, but man, I don't want to lose it if this is the last one I see for a year that I really like and it's got the provenance and all that. So I think this sale made sense. Wasn't all that surprising to me, but beautiful card. And then here's another one that popped up just a month later. This one did kind of surprise me. And I will say that I was the underbidder here. I was really excited about this card. I thought in many ways it bested this one in terms of eye appeal. I like the white borders on a 49 Bowman Jackie versus the tan sand color. This is perfect placement of the auto, almost a perfect auto as well. And then I was really unfazed by the paper loss here. There wasn't any meaningful creases. So to me, it was, I don't know what more I could expect to see. And I went through past sales and looked at basically every signed 49 Bowman, and I thought this was the prettiest one for the things that I like, which is, it's a rookie card. It's got great color. It's got great auto placement. Generally high eye appeal card, other than this um, paper loss. So I was willing to go pretty aggressively, and looking back, I'm not really sure why I bailed when I did, but I think I was half hoping that it would get another bid and I could just kind of get a little bit more time to think about it. But then the clock ran out and I was um, kind of bummed. I was like, all right, well, it sold for um, 85 uh, thousand or 86,000, just about, which is the third highest sale. So nothing to be like, it's not like it really underperformed. But yeah, after the previous card just a couple months before was 117, and this one might look better, it's surprising that I did nearly, what, $32,000 less. This one didn't have the provenance. It wasn't part of a big signed vintage auction, which this one was. I think it got a lot of eyeballs because of that. Um, but this one, yeah, fell short of the 117, and it made me think maybe we've tapped out of six-figure bidders for this card. There's only so many people in the hobby that can spend um, six figures in general on a single card. There's also so many that are focused on doing that on Jackie Robinson, so many that are focused on doing that on signed Jackie Robinson cards. And that circle, I think, is getting smaller as people have picked up their copy of it. Um, there's less of the two-horse race battling it out for an extra 20,000 or 30,000 on the night of the auction. And I think that might have been what happened here. That, or just Leland's didn't bring in the right bidders, or this just did what it's supposed to do. There's no real price for a card, or no real value for a card. It's always what somebody's willing to pay for it. So yeah, I think this was one of the lower sales in my view, but still a great price and great card overall. This one's outside of my range, but I thought, why you kind of have to bring it up because it's in this Hall of Fame rookie card. The Alifa Bolliger Pele rookie is generally accepted as his rookie, his main rookie. He's got a number of 58 cards, but this is the highest graded. There's one other 5, 10, but this one, I looked at the other. This one looks, I think, slightly better. So you could say this is his best signed rookie card out there. And even though the soccer card market doesn't have as big of a collecting base, this did nearly the same amount as a Jackie rookie, which I don't know how to square that. I mean, I think this was one of these situations where I started to get into, it reminded me of when I started to get into Messi rookies, and I just loved watching Messi growing up, and it's like, I gotta get some signed Messi rookies, and I can't believe this is only 10,000 or 5,000 or 15,000. He's the greatest player of the generation, and the equivalent would be, like the price of those is the same as a generic Mickey Mantle 50s signed card. I'm like, well, this is clearly a better card on its own, but you have to think about the market that it swims in. And I think it goes back to how many people are willing to spend that kind of money on a soccer player when they view themselves as mostly a baseball player or a Hall of Fame collector, and baseball collector, a Hall of Fame collector. And I think that's what's showing up here. But this, we've hit on it. There's only a handful of these out there. I don't think, there's 5 total signed. There's 2 that are 5s, 2 that are 4s. I don't think there'll be more that pops up here. Pele did sign a lot towards the end of his life, but I think the majority of those got graded. And there's always the risk that some other card comes up and beats the highest graded one because it's been sitting raw for a long time. But I'd be surprised if that happened here. given the focus that's been on his autographed cards over the past couple of years. I think Heritage had an entire auction dedicated to it. So I think I'm going to keep going here. This is the other 49 Bowman that came from the Mike Greenbaum collection. An amazing card. I got to see this in person, and it really surprised me. I was talking to the owner of this card, and I thought this was going to be a 30, 35, maybe $40,000 card. Part of back in my mind, I'm like, oh, I could always go to 45, 50. I don't know, but I would not have guessed $70,000. And yeah, it hurt because I had one of these and I sold it for a fraction of that price. So I wish I'd held on to it. But the reason being is this is, again, too many people collecting signed Hall of Fame rookie cards and too few cards available. This is potentially the hardest Hall of Fame rookie card to get. There's one other contender in the post-war era, which would be the Hal Newhouser signed 48 Leaf. But this one's probably more desirable just because Campanella was, a more respected player. Newhouser was kind of a World War II era pitcher, won a couple MVPs, but just not as collectible as Campanella, who has another key factor that goes into his signed cards, which is, was it done post-accident or pre-accident? In 1957 or 58, he got in a car accident that paralyzed him, and he then signed with like an auto pen essentially for the rest of his life after that accident. But this one was signed, in Brooklyn at Ebbets Field before that accident, and it's a gorgeous card to begin with. It's a 1.5, but it looks better than that, or at least has the eye appeal above the 1.5. And I think this one clearly was just one or two people, or two or three people that were battling it out. I think the estimate at the time was 30,000, and it, more than doubled. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this can be indicative of, wow, the signed vintage market is so hot. I think it's more a lesson of, when you find something that is desirable and incredibly scarce, sending it to auction at a big auction house can be the way to maximize your value. Because I can tell you, when I had one of these and I was floating it to private collectors, they were saying, it's not in great shape. I don't know, like maybe 12,000, maybe 10,000. And if I had just sent that to auction, I'm sure I would have crushed. And instead I ended up selling for like 15 or 16,000 or something. Which, can't complain, but it was, this made me think again about doing that in the future. Here's another story. I'll be quicker. This is a Pop 2 highest graded. So if you want to be on top of the mountain and get those decimal points for your set registry, you need this card as it relates to signed Hall of Fame rookie cards. And it was bigger number than I was expecting. The biggest sale, of course, of any, I think, might even be any Bob Gibson card. Let's take a look quickly. No, of course not. The 10. All right. Third highest sale of a Bob Gibson card of all time. Certainly the highest of any Bob Gibson auto. But wow, it's cool. I didn't realize there was 10. So this makes sense. I mean, that's what this was. It's a beautiful card, pretty good centering, decent placement of the auto. I probably would have preferred it like right here, but overall, this was a card that was driven by registry guys. This was somewhat similar. This is a very prevalent, a very available card. Out of all of the cards you're going to see today, this has the highest population count. Over 600 signed Bird Magic rookies. This is an 810. It's one of 24 8s. There are 4 9s. So if you want This is one of the ones you got to get. You might not expect to get a 910 autographed, and an 810, 910, those aren't easily replicated. You'd have to spend the money to get an 8, to get a 9, and then have it go to 3 different guys and have them not mangle a corner or whatever happens to the surface, and then go back to PSA and have them, graded an 8 again. And honestly, when I look at this one close, I'm kind of surprised that it did. Like there's kind of a soft corner here, but I'm not a grader, so this felt kind of low. I mean, when you think about what this tells me is that there are far more baseball collectors doing signed vintage than basketball collectors. Because when you think about any average LeBron, Jordan, Kobe auto, you can get pack pulled, is what I'm talking about. You can get into this range almost instantly. If you get a couple of those guys on a card, it's minimum 20,000. Some of their exquisite patches and exquisite autos can go to 20,000 on their own. And now we're talking about one of the best signed rookie cards in the basketball hobby doing 16.8. I think we're going to look back on this and say that's a really good price, but I would be careful if I were you and you were considering getting one of these in a lower grade. They're just so available. There's kind of a floor that is how much these guys charge for their signings. So I don't know that these cards will ever dip really below $2,000, $2,500, but unless of course population triples, but I don't know that I would ever race to get one of these in my collection. I think I've owned a couple. I don't think I own one now, but it's an awesome card in hand. For that reason alone, it's worth getting if you think you'd love it. But I wouldn't say, oh man, I got to go out tomorrow and get the first one I see, because there's probably 20 on eBay, and at auction you'll be able to pick find your choice if you wait long enough. Okay, another example of where I was a little surprised by the price, and it makes me think that the basketball signed vintage hobby has some catching up to do with baseball, because this is one of the highest graded Bill Russell cards. It is in PSA, there's a handful of Pop 5s. Let's see. Can you hear me? So in PSA, there are a handful of 5s, and there are a few 6s and 1 7. And we've seen a PSA 6.5 do, I believe, like $150,000. So let me just check that quickly. Yeah, $181,000. And then a 610 did 42,000 in green ink. And then this is the third highest sale at a 5.7, 27,000. That's just a significant drop. And maybe you could say this was overpaid for. Very possible. But these two feel like prices that will look smart down the road, in my view. There could be more that pop up that are raw, because Russell only passed a few years ago, and he might have been signing quite a bit. People didn't get them graded, but there's only 78 in the population. Not too prevalent as it relates to one of the greatest basketball players of all time and his signed rookie card. So and this one also has a bit of a period signature on it, which I would have thought drove a more higher premium, but could just be that, there's just not enough guys out there that are currently collecting that type of card, and I think that's a sign of market maturity, or immaturity in this case, and means that there's probably more room to run in basketball. But obviously, just one guy's opinion. Okay, so here's Hank Aaron. There's a few Hank Aaron cards that I want to look at, and as I'm moving through here, I think I'm gonna have to split this video into two parts because it's getting kind of long. But I'll do the Hall of Fame rookie card. I'll close out this in this video, and then I'll do the non-Hall of Fame rookie cards. So this was a really telling comparison. Is as you look at this card, 6'10", beautiful card. Can't pick it apart too much. There are 5'6s, 165, and 1'8. Personally, I think that could change because there's 162 in the population that are graded authentic, which might have been by choice when they graded it. So those 162 could be regraded and get a number grade down the road. And, if I were a betting person, I would say that one or two of those is going to be in the 5, 6, 7 category potentially. So, I wouldn't say like, man, this is like a 1 of 5 card forever. Hank was signing up until very recently and until he passed. And I would love to have a 6'10", but I don't know that I would say that that's definitely always going to be one of his best cards. But it did $46,000, and that is a lot of money. And one thing we haven't really brought up is comparing the price of a signed card to a non-signed card. It's equivalent. So let's look at a 1954 Topps PSA 6. Let's see. I didn't even type in signed. Oh, because these are, I was doing it by price. So that is about, let's see, 9,000, 8,200, 12,000, 8,500. So say it's a $9,000 card. And maybe it's worth even me going to VCP so we can see all this. So 1954 Topps, Aaron. What I'm doing is I want to pull up the prices of these so we can see, okay, this sold for $46,000. That is roughly the same as someone buying a PSA 8 unsigned. So we can see here that there was a $45,000 sale for a really nice PSA 8. Maybe it's more like a PSA 8.5. Well, no, those are 130,000. So it's somewhere between an 8 and an 8.5. And at that level, like, I think that is max value to pay for a generic signed vintage card. When I try to price things out, I'm always thinking, okay, for the average collector, would they rather have a PSA 6 or a signed version of this card if it's not too popular or too readily available? Would they rather have a PSA 7 than a signed version of this card? Would they rather have a PSA 8? And I think whenever I get to 8, I'm always like, I could kind of see someone wanting an 8 over a signed version of this card. And so I don't typically try to pay more than what an 8 would go for, unless it's very rare or very special to me, like a Jackie card. So I would say that this sale kind of made sense to me in that regard, where it's a 6'10", there's only 5 6s, it's a great card, it's off-centered, but really good color and surface and registration. And, it's not getting to those levels where you're saying, only crazy people or uber wealthy people that can pay the 8, 5, 9, and 10 range. So I would say, this might be a little bit more than I thought, but in the realm of reasonable, and I think signals a continuously healthy market in signed vintage. But when I compare this to this card, which sold just like a week or two ago. Yeah, last week. This is a 359, and it is a better card, in my opinion. And it's a better signed card, pretty clearly. So when you look at this one, it's a 610. The reason you want it is mostly because of its grading scarcity. When you look at this one, it's a 359, but it's got amazing centering, which is incredibly hard to find in 54 tops. Amazing registration, clean surface, great color, and a ballpoint vintage signature from Hank. So it's not this contrasting Sharpie, bold blue Sharpie with a vintage card. It's a period pen with a period playing days signature from Hank, not one that he was signing at shows in the 2000s. This is just a very pretty card, and if someone put those two down on a table next to me, I was like, didn't tell me the grades, I'd say, oh, I'd take this one all day. And it did 22,800. So less than half of, or just about half of this one. So you could buy this card twice for this card. I mean, personally, I think that's just such an obvious choice that I'd rather have this and 20,000 bucks. But if you are a registry guy, you need this card. Like, this is what matters to you. That's how you climb your mountain. So I think that's what's going on here. And I think the person who made this purchase was pretty smart. Someone else out there might say, well, actually, you can buy just a generic, not as perfect card or playing days auto for 5,000. Like a signed Hank rookie is pretty available, and there's over 350 of them, and you get it for 4,000 or 5,000 bucks. True, that could be your cup of tea as well, as buy that 4 times instead of this one. But like I said earlier, I like to have a beautiful card to look at, and I think this one checks that box. It's just in that special category where someone says, yeah, this could be my 54 tops for my collection, Hank rookie forever, and I don't ever need to upgrade it. And so that drives really significant bidding activity, I think. This one, I don't really have much to say about it other than I would be careful with non-core cards. So one thing that I think about a lot is how relevant, like the rarity versus relevancy spectrum. Maybe not mutually exclusive, but there are cards out there that can hook you with their rarity. You could say, man, this is a regional Braves issue. People like the Johnston Cookie rookie from Hank. It's a cool card. Like, oh man, it's a PSA 8 autographed. It's kind of a, later year sloppy autograph, but how rare is this? That's amazing. And the grade and all that. I could see that happening at a smaller dollar scale too. And I step back and say, yeah, but how many people would want this card over just the signed Hank rookie, like the rookie? And I think almost, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could see myself spending $19,000 on this, even if I had that to throw at a Hank rookie, over the traditional 54 tops. Like, there is some real benefit that signed vintage cards get from the core unsigned card being the highly desirable card. That's kind of how I got into this. Is I said, wow, I love the 53 tops page, and there's so many of them, and I don't know how to pick which one's going to be my 53 tops page. And I said, well, wouldn't it be great if it was the one that he held and signed? Like, that could be the way I sort through all the mess, is just get that one, rather than comparing the hundreds across, collector grades. And when I stare at this card, there's definitely people who like this card. But the average vintage collector is going to say, yeah, this is cool, but it's kind of oddball. And, I don't know if I could see myself spending the same amount as this near perfect Hank rookie with the period signature. So just a word of caution, I guess, in my view. And here's another word of caution as we get into the final few here. This showed up in March. It was one of two. Signed Joe Louis, I would call a rookie card. He doesn't have many options. This is, a more traditional card and first one that was issued for him. Autograph went for $22,000. On its own, hard to say is that good or not because it really hasn't sold before. And, one of the greatest boxers of all time, cultural icon, and, tough signature. I think he passed in the 80s. So you don't expect to see too many of these. However, this card clearly brought out this card. Someone had this card here, the eBay one, and saw the sale of $22,000 and said, I would rather have that than this card. And so just a month later, after this one sold, this one showed up. It's the highest graded. It's the better card, better condition. Maybe the autograph isn't as nice. Yeah, pretty clearly not as nice. But for the people out there who want the registry highest graded card, which there are many, this showed up just a month later. And a word on its price. I would say whoever bought this got a deal. I threw in a bid, I think, of $8,500 because it was sitting at $3,000 all week. And I was like, just for the money opportunity, like the value opportunity, if an authentic 10 just did $22,000, I'm comfortable paying $8,000 to get the PSA 4. But I don't need the card. I don't have any reason to buy this card. I'm not a boxing collector. So I wasn't gonna pay 14 thinking I was still getting a deal just because it's too much money for me. But someone paid 10 and they got a screaming deal compared to this one. And that could be the case or it could be the case that this is the new price for the card. But I think this was an incorrect decision to throw this on eBay. I think you need to get it its proper due, the catalog, let people see that this was that's coming to market, that it's gets its attention, and not just thrown up as a 10-day auction on eBay where you might miss out on the two guys that were battling for this card. I would have personally sent this to Heritage and said, give me a $40,000 estimate because I want to beat this comp. But yeah, so I would be careful if you're consigning, but also if you're thinking about value, just check where it was sold. And this ended 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. Or midnight on Eastern time. I don't think that was done the right way. Okay, so final couple here. Yeah. So Hank Greenberg did $25,800. I think this is a great price for it. Hank Greenberg is, one of the greats in the game. Also, importantly, I think the first Jewish Hall of Famer, and that creates a strong collecting base for his cards, as many people like first, and there's a lot of people of the Jewish faith in our hobby as well who like Sandy and Hank, and it's just a rare rookie card. So of course it's going to do well. If someone showed it to me, I probably would have paid $12,000 at a show, just because it's generally in that range of, there's plenty of signed vintage cards that sell like that, and this is a tough one to find. And it's only, I think, a pop 10 overall. This is a TSA 2. There's 2 3s with qualifiers, so this is actually better than those by PSA standards, and then there's a PSA 5. So second best card, I think I would have been very comfortable buying something like this. 25,000. It's hard to say that you're doing wrong there because I doubt there's going to be much more than one more that pops up. It's raw in some collection, and um, it's a rookie card of one of the greats of the game, and you're getting it for the price of, like I said before, like a LeBron auto, or a LeBron exquisite auto. It's like this is going to be something that someone needs for their Hall of Fame rookie card set one day, or you could just look at it and say it's a pretty great card, and I want it for my collection. So cheers to the buyer there. And then this is the final one. This one surprised me. I was not expecting a basketball player I never heard of to do $14,000, but it continues a story of people wanting the one of one to climb the mountain. This is the only known example that I've signed. He passed in 2010, so personally, I would say that's well past the TTM craze, through the mail craze of 2000 to 2004. So there's probably other ones out there that are just sitting raw because who gets their Carl Braun graded. I think this is going to look like an overpay when those pop up. But for now, this person can say they've got the Hall of Fame rookie card that no one else has, and that's worth something to many people. So I hope you learned something in this video. I'll come back with part two, where we cover some, I think, more interesting cards, where it's not just, it's the rookie card that was signed and therefore it's worth a lot. And I'll try to recap some of the tips in that video as well. But hopefully, if you learned something, you can give me a comment just to say what you liked, where I could do better. Just thought it would be interesting to share some of the stuff that I've picked up in the hobby and maybe useful to you all. So thanks all.